I, female, 38, am taking care of my dying father, while my ex-husband, male, 40, completely changed our twins' 10th birthday plans without telling me. I don't know how to handle this on top of everything else. Throwaway, because my ex knows my main account. So basically, I've been divorced from Mark for about 3 years now. We split after I found out he was having an emotional affair with a coworker, Vanessa, who he swore was just a friend, despite all the late-night texting and the work lunches that he was weirdly secretive about. I'm not stupid, Mark. Anyway, that's not really the point, but I guess it matters for context. Right now, I'm dealing with 2 major situations at once, and I honestly can't handle it. My dad, male 72, was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer about 4 months ago. The doctors gave him like 2 to 3 months to live. It's hard, really hard. He coached Little League for 20 plus years and was planning a cross-country road trip. I've been his primary caretaker since the diagnosis, and I had to take a leave of absence from my job as an elementary school counselor. Thank God for FMLA, but the money situation is getting tight. That's a whole other issue, though. So in the middle of all this, my twins Jake and Lily are turning 10 next week. They've been asking for months to have their birthday party at the Science Discovery Museum. They're both super into science stuff right now. Jake is obsessed with volcanoes, and Lily wants to be a bug scientist, lol. Because I've been so busy with my dad's hospice care, I asked Mark if he could handle booking the museum and sending out invitations. He agreed and said he'd take care of everything. Well, yesterday, I got a text from Melissa, another mom from the twins' class, asking why the museum party was canceled and if everything was okay. I was like, what? This was literally the first I'd heard about any cancellation. So I immediately called the museum, and they told me no party was ever booked under our name. I called Mark and found out he decided to completely change the plans without even telling me. Instead of the museum party the kids specifically asked for, he's having a family-only celebration at his house with his parents, his sisters, and their kids. And guess who's not invited? Me and my dying father. Like, what the frick? When I asked Mark why he changed everything without telling me, he first claimed he couldn't get the museum booking. When I told him I just called and they had availability, he admitted he thought a family party would be better. He didn't invite me and my dad because he thinks his parents deserve more time with the kids and that my dad would make everyone sad. When I pointed out this isn't what the twins wanted, he brought up how I used to limit his parents' involvement. He ended by saying, since he's paying and it's his weekend, I don't get a say. So there's definitely history with Mark's parents. I did try to limit their involvement during our marriage because they constantly undermined my parenting decisions. Like, I told them specifically that Jake couldn't have this violent video game, and the very next day his grandparents bought it for him. Or they'd give the twins tons of sugary snacks right before bedtime, even though I asked them 1,000,000 times not to. His mom once referred to me as just a phase. At a family gathering, she didn't know I was right behind her. So yeah, there's history. I just don't know what to do. My dad keeps saying some battles aren't worth the breath I don't have left, which makes me feel even worse. I already feel guilty because I've been missing stuff for the kids lately, like Jake's soccer game last week when my dad was having a really bad day. I feel like I'm failing at everything. Can't be a good mom, can't be a good daughter. I'm so tired all the time. Do I try to plan a separate party during my time with the kids? Do I just accept the situation to avoid more drama? Do I push back harder? I've always been bad at confrontation, grew up with parents who fought constantly before their own divorce, and Mark knows this and uses it against me. I'm just so tired. Edit. Thank you all for the supportive comments. To answer some questions, yes, we have a formal custody agreement. It's 60-40, with Mark having slightly more time because of my work schedule before all this happened with my dad. And no, there's nothing in the agreement about birthdays specifically, just that we're supposed to cooperate on special events. Edit 2. A lot of you are asking about my dad's relationship with the twins. They are super close with him. He's been their baseball coach since they were little and used to have special grandpa sleepovers where they'd build blanket forts and watch nature documentaries. They know he's sick, but we haven't told them exactly how serious it is. Now, for the first update. First, I want to say thank you to everyone who commented on my last post. It's been a really rough week. My dad's condition has gotten much worse over the past few days. He's now on way higher doses of pain medication and basically sleeps like 20 hours a day. When he is awake, he's really confused most of the time, which is honestly scary to see. I ended up having to hire a part-time caregiver to help because I just can't do it all by myself anymore. I had to use the money I'd been saving for a down payment on a house, which sucks. But what else could I do? Family first, right? The family birthday party at Mark's house happened last weekend, and it was just awful. Like, I knew it would be uncomfortable, but it was so much worse than I expected. I was seated at the complete opposite end of the table from Jake and Lily, while Mark's mom basically took over the entire celebration. She kept making these little comments about how birthdays used to be before everything fell apart, while looking right at me. Like, was that necessary? The kids were really disappointed the whole time and kept asking when their friends were going to show up. Mark just kept telling them maybe next time, which obviously confused them since they've had friends at every birthday party since they were 3. At one point, I overheard Mark's sister, who has always hated me by the way, telling someone that I was using Dad's illness as an excuse to avoid family obligations. Are you kidding me? I've been functioning on like 4 hours of sleep for weeks. His mom kept making these passive-aggressive comments about how I was too busy to properly celebrate their birthday. Yeah, I'm too busy, keeping my dying father comfortable, you heartless witch. Sorry for the language, but I'm still so angry about this. The worst part of the whole thing was when Mark's mom announced it was time for family photos. She started organizing everyone and put Mark right next to the twins. Meanwhile, I'm just standing there awkwardly, like, where do I fit in this picture? Then Mark's sister had the nerve to suggest that I should just take the photos instead of being in them. When I objected, because hello, I'm their mother, his mom literally told me I wasn't really family anymore. I felt awful when she said that. The twins heard it and looked so confused and uncomfortable. Jake refused to smile for any photos unless I joined them. Mark eventually waved me over but put me at the very edge of the group. Later that night, his mom posted the photos on Facebook, and guess what? I was completely cropped out of all of them. When I texted Mark about it, he just said I was being too sensitive. Being sensitive about being erased from my children's birthday photos. Am I taking crazy pills here? After all that, I decided I had to do something. The twins were so disappointed about not having the museum party they wanted. So I went ahead and booked the Science Discovery Museum package for the following weekend, which is during my parenting time. I sent out invitations to their friends with an apologetic note about the date change. I figured I should tell Mark as a courtesy, and I mentioned it would just be the kids and their friends. No big family thing. His reaction completely blindsided me. He went off about how I was trying to make him look bad and playing the hero. Then he suddenly told me he'd already planned to take the kids to his parents' lake house that weekend, something he conveniently forgot to mention earlier. He basically threatened to keep the kids from attending their own party completely. I was telling my dad about this during one of his lucid moments, and he suggested that Mark might be afraid I'll replace his family in the kids' lives. And that made me think, maybe there are deeper insecurities at play here. I know some of you mentioned this in comments on my last post. Unfortunately, the twins overheard us arguing on the phone about all this. Jake is now refusing to talk to either of us, and Lily had a complete breakdown crying and said, "Why can't I just have one normal birthday?" It really hurt to hear her say that. My dad insisted on contributing to the party costs from his savings. He told me he wanted to do this while he still could, and I just lost it. I know he doesn't have much time left and that he wants to do this last thing for them. I'm literally crying again typing this part out. When I dropped the kids off at Mark's yesterday, I mentioned that my dad wanted to contribute to the museum party. Mark immediately accused me of trying to buy the kids' affection. When I explained that it's really important to my dad to do something special before he, Mark had the audacity to suggest that my father should have thought about that before missing so many events. I was shocked. My dad has barely missed anything important for the twins their entire lives. He has been to literally every baseball game, school play, everything. Then Mark claimed my dad always favored Lily over Jake. Where the hell did that come from? I tried to defend my dad, saying he loves both kids equally. Mark brought up this thing from 2 years ago when my dad bought Lily a slightly more expensive birthday gift. I tried to explain it was because Jake had already received a big gift from my brother that year, but Mark wouldn't listen. He ended the conversation by saying my family never understood his children anyway. My children, they're our children. Honestly, at that point, I was so angry I couldn't even speak. I just turned around and left before I said something I'd regret. This morning, Mark texted me saying he's consulted his lawyer about this parenting time violation and reminded me about some clause in our custody agreement requiring mutual consent for significant celebrations. I don't even remember that being in there, but I guess I should have read it more carefully before signing. I'm such an idiot sometimes. I feel completely trapped. My dad is dying, my kids are disappointed and confused, and my ex is getting more hostile by the day. Sometimes, and I know this is terrible, I wish I could just take the kids and move away somewhere and start over. Then I feel horribly guilty for even thinking that. I'm just so tired, so unbelievably tired. Now for the second update. So much has happened in the past couple weeks, and I've been trying to process everything while also dealing with, grief. My dad passed away. I guess I should start from where I left off. After all that drama with Mark about the museum party, things got so much worse so quickly. My dad's condition deteriorated really fast, like way faster than the doctors prepared us for. It was scary how quickly he went from having some good days to barely being conscious most of the time. This was like 3 days before the planned museum party, and I was literally in the middle of finalizing some details for it when the hospice nurse called me into his room because his breathing had changed. I freaked out, obviously, and immediately called Mark to see if he could take the kids earlier than scheduled. I was such a mess, couldn't even think straight. I remember just saying something like, "My dad's getting worse," and asking if he could please take the kids now. And surprisingly, he agreed without arguing. While I was rushing around trying to get the twins' stuff together, I left my phone unlocked on the kitchen counter. I wasn't even thinking about it. I was just trying to get everything organized so I could focus on my dad. So Mark shows up to get the kids, and I'm running back and forth between rooms trying to find Jake's inhaler, which of course he had left in the one place I didn't look. And I guess, Mark must have seen my phone just sitting there and decided to go through my messages. Who does that? What kind of person sees someone panicking about their dying father and thinks, good time to snoop through their private texts? Anyway, he read through my conversations with my friend Sarah, where I had been venting about, a lot of things, his family mostly. And yes, I know venting in texts isn't the most mature thing, but I was exhausted and needed to let it out somewhere. I had said some pretty harsh stuff about how Mark's family had always treated me like I was just temporary, even during our marriage. There were messages about how I felt like I'd never be free of them, even after divorce. And yeah, I complained about how his parents constantly undermined my parenting. The worst part was this one message where I had written, "Sometimes I wish they'd just disappear from our lives," which sounds really bad out of context. But this was right after Mark's mom had told the twins that my rules don't matter at Grandma's house, and then criticized how I was handling my dad's illness in front of the kids. So yeah, I was angry and frustrated. So Mark sees all this and completely loses it. He starts yelling at me right in front of Jake and Lily, saying I'm the real problem all along, and that the texts prove I never wanted his family involved with the twins. The kids are standing there getting upset and confused, and I'm trying to tell him that this isn't the time or place, and my dad is literally dying in the next room, but he just kept going. Then something really weird happened. My dad, who had barely been able to speak above a whisper for days, somehow called out Mark's name from his bedroom, loud enough that we all heard it clearly. Mark ignored him at first and kept going off on me. Then my dad called for him again, and his voice was surprisingly strong considering how weak he'd been. Mark looked really annoyed, but finally went to my dad's room, while I stayed with the twins, who were both crying by this point. I tried to listen at the door, but could only hear mumbling, not actual words. They were in there for 15 minutes. Felt like forever. While I was trying to calm the kids down and explain that grown-ups sometimes get mad, but everything would be okay. Total lie, by the way. I had no idea if things would be okay. When Mark finally came out of the room, he looked, weird, almost shaken. When I asked what they talked about, he just muttered that it was nothing important in this really quiet voice. Then he took the kids without arguing anymore, which was completely out of character for him. Before leaving, he looked back at my dad's room with this expression I still can't figure out. It was almost like fear, respect. I don't know. When I went back to check on my dad, he seemed weirdly peaceful, like something had been resolved. I asked what he said to Mark, but he just smiled and squeezed my hand before falling back asleep. The next 2 days were basically just me sitting by my dad's bed while he slipped in and out of consciousness. During one of his lucid moments, he whispered that he made arrangements and I should trust him. I had no idea what he meant and honestly thought it might be the pain meds talking. My dad passed away early in the morning on what would have been the museum party day. I was holding his hand when he took his last breath. I'm sorry, it's hard to type this part clearly, keep having to stop. About 3 hours later, while I was still trying to process everything and make calls to family, I got a text from Mark that just said he was at the museum with the kids and I could come if I wanted. I was confused because 1, I thought the party was canceled after all our fighting, and 2, my dad literally just died. Why would I go to a party? But something made me feel like I should go, maybe because it was what my dad would have wanted. When I got to the Science Discovery Museum, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Mark had somehow organized the exact party the twins had wanted, with all the science experiments packaged and their friends and everything. I asked him why he did this when we had been fighting about it for weeks, and he just said my father had called him the night before he lost consciousness. He wouldn't tell me anything else about it. The party wasn't like some magical reconciliation moment or anything. Mark and I basically stayed on opposite sides of the room and only spoke when absolutely necessary. But the twins were happy, and that's what mattered. Mark's parents showed up briefly toward the end of the party. His mom started making her usual comments about how I wasn't there for setup and questioning why I'd arrived late. Because my dad died that morning. But then the weirdest thing happened. Mark told her to stop in this tone I'd never heard him use with her before. She looked shocked and actually shut up for once. After the party, when most people had left, Mark handed me a sealed envelope and said my dad asked him to give it to me afterward. Inside was a letter my father had written weeks ago. It had loving messages for the twins about how proud he was of them, plus a legal document establishing a college trust fund for them. And get this, I was named as the sole trustee, meaning Mark couldn't touch that money or make decisions about it. There was also a USB drive in the envelope labeled insurance. I didn't look at it until later that night after the twins were asleep. When I plugged it into my laptop, I was shocked. It was a video recording of a conversation between Mark's parents in what looked like their kitchen. They were discussing plans to get more custody of the twins once he's gone, meaning my dad, and how they could use my grief as evidence that I was not emotionally stable enough for full custody. His mom specifically said they could finally minimize Emma's influence, and his dad talked about helping Mark afford a better lawyer to finally get what we deserve. I immediately texted Mark asking if he'd seen what was on the drive. All he responded with was that yes, my dad had shown him. I asked what this meant for us going forward, and he didn't answer until the next morning, with just that things would be different now. When I saw Mark's face at the museum when I showed him the trust documents, I could tell he knew he'd lost whatever leverage he thought he had. There wasn't some big reconciliation or heart-to-heart talk, just this new understanding that I would never again have to compromise on important things for the kids. The next time we did a custody exchange, Mark could barely make eye contact with me, and his parents weren't there, which was unusual. When I asked where they were, he just muttered that they won't be involved with pickups anymore. 2 weeks later, I got an official notice that Mark had withdrawn some petition for custody modification that I didn't even know he was preparing. Like, he was apparently planning to try for more custody without even telling me. I mean, I guess that's not surprising, but still. While going through my dad's papers after the funeral, I found a note that just said, "The best revenge is living well after I'm gone." I completely lost it when I read that. My dad knew. He knew what Mark and his family were planning, and he somehow got evidence of it and used it to protect us even after he was gone. Mark and I still barely speak to each other, but he doesn't question my decisions about the kids anymore. I do worry about what kind of relationship the twins will have with their paternal grandparents going forward. Sometimes I feel guilty about the recording my dad made, like was it an invasion of privacy? But then I remember they were literally planning to use my father's death against me to take my children, and the guilt goes away pretty quick. The twins still talk about their grandfather every day. They leave chocolate chip cookies, his favorite, by his photo every night. It's this tradition he started when they were little. They've stopped asking when everyone will get along, though. It's like they understand some things just can't be fixed, only managed. I miss my dad so much, but he's still protecting us, even now.